Donald Trump's victory last night puts President Obama's biggest legacy, the disastrous Obamacare, it puts it in grave peril, and in my opinion, not a moment too soon. Just last month, the White House announced healthcare premiums are expected to rise by 25% in 2017 under Obamacare. This, of course, on top of the already daunting premiums and outrageous deductibles that have resulted in crushing out-of-pocket costs for healthcare for middle-class Americans. So what is America's healthcare system going to look like under a President Trump? Joining me now to discuss from New York City, board-certified family physician, Dr. Jonathan Vitale. Dr. Jonathan, good to see you.
Hey Liz, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Dr. Jonathan, we have some very interesting conversation for today. In the segment right before this, I don't know if you heard that, I talked to former Congressman Inglis of South Carolina. We talked about Obamacare a little bit. He expressed his skepticism, and that's putting it nicely, his skepticism about how Donald Trump will repeal Obamacare and how exactly he will replace it with something better. And then he took it one step further. He said that the true conservative principle is to have an individual mandate stemming from the federal government that forces Americans to have health insurance or pay a penalty in order to avoid the free rider problem, he calls it. Dr. Jonathan, as a physician yourself, explain to us the flaw inherent in that argument.
Well, you know, the flaw is from the start of Obamacare, it has been just flocked with problems, okay? First of all, it's just way too expensive. And patients suffer, doctors suffer, and patients suffer. The other thing is, it's unconstitutional to force somebody to buy health insurance. There's a lot that Trump is talking about and also that Paul Ryan is talking about in order to make a much better plan. But it definitely, I don't believe it's true at all that there's any place for a mandatory mandate of any sort in the health insurance arena, because at the end of the day, patients suffer. And even if they don't realize that, they do suffer from that. So definitely there's no place for it.
Right. So, certainly not at the federal level. State level, that's a totally separate discussion here. But let's answer the how question. Congressman Inglis was saying, you know, no one's answering how. They're giving all these promises. They're not saying how they're going to accomplish it. Dr. Jonathan, talk to us about what Donald Trump is going to do. How is he going to replace Obamacare?
Yeah, so he has a few options, right? So the first thing he can do is he can absolutely repeal and replace Obamacare, which would be going through the Congress. He may deal with a filibuster from the Senate Democrats. But alternatively to that, he can go ahead and defund it through the budget reconciliation. But let me tell you some of the specifics of the plan, which I think are going to be really great. First is going to be the tax-free health savings plans. Now, these are really important, which helps Americans to save and purchase their health plans, and it's up to them which health plan they want. The other component of this plan, which is super important, is opening up the state lines to help with the competition of health plans, which we have wanted for years and years. The other thing is getting rid of the ridiculous mandate and instead replacing it with an incentive, a tax incentive, so people can write off these premiums on their income tax, which is going to be so incredibly transformative. And then other things too. You talked about state plans, leaving Medicaid up to the state. Right. You know, that should be a state issue. So having that stopgap measure for Medicaid leaving that up to the state, and then also helping to make sure that people are getting good prices on prescription drugs. Which is a really big issue, and we can talk about that with letting drugs come in or prescription drugs come in from other developed nations. So those are basically the tenets of the Trump health plan. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like yet, but the best news of the day is that it looks like Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan are essentially on the same page with this, and they're going to work hard with Trump to design something over the next few months so they can really hit the ground running on January 20th.
Right, and I guess this is a small bit off the topic from Obamacare, but I anticipate, hopefully I'm not wrong in this prediction, I anticipate House Republicans, Senate Republicans, and Donald Trump working pretty well together, because the goal, at least of the first year of Donald Trump's presidency, will be to roll back so many of these disastrous policies like Obamacare. And conservatives, Republicans, regardless of which fragment of the Republican Party you fall in, we pretty much agree on that. We agree on that except for the tiny, tiny little details, and those can be worked out without too much problem. Dr. Jonathan, thank you so much for your expertise. It's always great to have you on the show. All right, guys, our final tipping point of the night. the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. We'll be right back.